Most people don't realize they're caught in that trap, right? Like it's
Right.
easy for us to criticize that or to say that, but it's like, yeah, but how do I know if I'm that person? And so, I think the big one is like if you're an executive or a leader or a founder, especially if you're a founder and you started the company, your identity is definitely entrenched in that. And that's where a lot of leaders have problems when they sell or they bring in an investor, right? That's kind of part of the story. And if you're part of a peer group or something like that, like people are going to tell you that. I think it's actually more dangerous at the manager level or the team member level. When you're a manager and your friends, I'm going to air quote friends here, are your direct reports, that is a very unhealthy relationship. And that is where your identity is tied into. And then when you have to make a strategic decision, the business changes direction or you have a performance problem, you have to fire one of your friends, you made too much of the wrong connection. And that's where work becomes too important to your social life. And then as a team member, right, the same thing is, I've had people that work for me like this and they're just so good and they love serving and they love helping others that it's at the detriment of their own health or their own well-being or their own community, friendships, family, etc., because they love the work so much and they're so bought into what they're doing that they literally run themselves in the ground.
I think that's an interesting idea that I hadn't considered, is that as a leader, how are you making sure that your people are not over invested in their work? Right? Most of us spend all of our time trying to get employees to care about work. And we'll talk about that in a second, right? Because that's the other ditch that you can fall into, is that work's not important enough to you. And that's probably where most of us spend our time, is helping people find their passion and find work that they're excited about doing. But I guess it's a new thought to me to think of, okay, if you're only here at work, you don't have any hobbies, you don't seem to have a personal life, you don't seem to have friends outside of work, that's actually a risky position for me as your manager, because if you don't have good things outside of work, you're not going to be a healthy person in the long run. You're not going to bring the best that you have to contribute because you're over-indexed on work.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's getting even, I don't know, I think there's varying degrees of worse and not worse. And that's probably a horrible statement to say. As we become more of an online community, especially people working remotely, your social emotional connections become the people you work with and less the real world. And you start going out to the real world and just trying to get in and out of the store. I think on the other hand, I think a lot of the younger generations are becoming very social where they do blend a lot of that together. But I still think then they're more connected to the work or the connection. And, this has been an interesting turn on it. When you're more connected to the people there than the mission, then work will actually start to suck, because if you're not bought into the mission, but you have to get the work done because that's where your friends are, that's also a way to get where work sucks.
Yeah, that's a bad situation. All right. So we've talked about some of the signs. I'd love to wrap that part up. What are some signs that work is too important to you? You don't have any friends outside of the office. You don't have any hobbies outside of the office. FOMO.
I think if there's something and you don't feel like you're in the middle of the know of everything going on at the company and you're unable to disconnect because you got to know every little detail that's going on because you feel like you're going to be missing out, I think that's a huge sign.
Yeah.
And it may feel like you feel like you're adding value or it's an important thing to you. But the real question is what are you shortcutting? Or what's the whole saying? You work to live, not live to work.
Mm-hmm.
When your life revolves around working and fear of missing out, of being part of it, that's a sign of it not going well.
A sign could be, part of the fear of missing out is if you're checking your email or Slack notifications in the middle of the night when you're not supposed to do that, and then your brain starts working, and instead of sleeping or doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're still thinking about work. When you're not really truly off, that's when it gets unhealthy.
Sounds like some experience there.
It does. It's come from
That
experience.
may have been a little bit of a conversation the other day.
Yes.
Just maybe.
Yes. But there has been some rules set around it, and I've been able to overcome that. So that's been good.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, and I can't remember where it comes from. I should probably look this up, but I think it's very powerful. The guy said, many of us are never truly on because we're never truly off. I know I've been guilty of waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work problems, but I've also found that by leaving work and going for a run or going for a walk or, whatever it is that you do to recharge and unwind, I actually end up bringing more creativity and energy with me back to the problem because it's still waiting for me, but actually shutting my brain off or shutting my work brain off for a good bit of time actually helps me solve problems faster than just continuing to grind on them when I'm at that point of diminishing returns.
Well, you know what's crazy is everybody's going to go through that. You're always going to have a project or a deadline or something, and you're going to have that night. Like if you had it once or twice, you're not what we're talking about. It's when it's every night for weeks, months on end, and you're not able to disconnect. And I think Tom just brought up a good point here. What if this is coming from my fear I'm going to be fired? If I don't get this work done, if I don't stay on top of this, then I'm going to be fired. I can't afford to be fired. So then your work identity is tied up into making sure your boss is happy.
That's a tough spot to be in.